All right, well, welcome back to Project Stargate. We're here with Niara Isley, and we were to before the break. We were talking about we were in the middle. You were telling us about the hypnosis session you had with Bud Hopkins.
Yeah.
You recalled a very disturbing and frightening experience on a slab where somebody injected something with you. What happened next?
Well, in Bud Hopkins' hypnosis session, I came out of the hypnosis at that time because I was so terrified. I couldn't even be under hypnosis anymore. I sat straight up and I looked at him and I said, something like, son of a bitch, does this kind of shit really happen to people?
Yeah,
you know? And he says, yes, it does. And that's when he said, I don't write anything about this because I want the government to stay out of my business.
right.
So, but I did go back and look at that experience again with another person who does hypnosis, and after that injection, in this other hypnosis session, which the transcripts of the hypnosis sessions are in my book, not the Bud Hopkins one because it was extremely hard to transcribe. There was a lot of interference on the recording, and it was like pulling teeth to try to listen to it. So basically, you're hearing what I remember from the hypnosis session. And so later on, when I had the other hypnosis session with another person who understands about military abductions, her name is Gloria Hawker, and she has a book out there also. But she did the hypnosis session for me. She did two of them. We looked at my ET experiences and then we looked at the military experiences. And so after that injection, these two security guards appeared on either side of me, lifted me up by the arms and dragged me off that table and down a long flight of stairs. And the way I remember it, it was a long flight of stairs, not switchbacks. You know how long flights go down and they're just kind of zigzag.
Right.
This seemed to be just one long flight that just went kind of straight down, kind of
Hmm.
spooky. And at the end of the flight, at the end of the stairs, down wherever we are, probably underground, they tossed me in a little booth. Like I said, I'm in shock from the injection, so uh, I'm aware of what's happening to me, but just kind of processing whatever that injection is doing to me. Um, so I went into this little room, and I noticed on one wall there was a mirror-looking glass, which I really instantly assumed it was a one-way glass that they were going to watch whatever I went through from the injection. And and I did go through the effects of the injection, and it was really scary. And I just recently finally figured out a good metaphor for the way it felt because it's really hard to describe. It was like your body being completely shot full of Novocaine and feeling that feeling like when Novocaine starts to wear off, only you feel it all over, and it's magnified in intensity from what you feel when your jaw's waking up from the dentist. It was really horrible, and it was really
Wow.
frightening.
I can
And
imagine.
I laid on the floor of that little room and I screamed, and I was holding myself like in this little tight ball because I felt like I was going to come apart. It felt some strange way. It felt like I wasn't glued together as much. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It felt like my molecules were going to fly apart. And then, just as a little aside to this, um, there was a movie that came out a few years ago called Lucy. Actually, maybe quite a few years ago by now. Lucy, and it was about Scarlett Johansson, and she got involved with like a Oriental drug ring, and it's a real interesting movie, very triggering for me because she got this fluorescent drug, uh, and they sewed it in a little pouch inside of her, and then some guy was kicking her because she avoided his advances, and he kicked her and kicked her in the side where that little pouch had been sewn right inside of her body, and it made that chemical leak out into her system. and she experienced extremely rapid consciousness evolution from that. And there was a scene in the airplane bathroom where she was afraid she looked like she was starting to come apart at the molecular level, and molecular level, if I can say the word right. And when I was watching that, I was like, holy crap, that's about how I was feeling in that little room, except what I wasn't feeling like it was just flying apart. It more felt to me like I was going to just dissolve away. My whole body was just going to dissolve away.
Wow, that's
So,
terrible.
yeah.
Absolutely terrible.
And then when I came, when I was just about over it, I wasn't screaming anymore. I was just kind of laying on the floor, exhausted from the whole thing. This is the hard part. I was taken out of that room and I was sexually assaulted by those two security guards that took me upstairs.
Oh,
And
bless your heart. God
yeah,
bless you. I'm so sorry.
yeah.
So
And
sorry.
8 people watched while that was going on. One of them was a tall gray ET.
Hmm.
And after going over and over that in my mind, I think I figured out that the guys that were watching it were being forced to watch it because maybe they had had some little indiscretions about sharing information about their job at Area 51 off the base. And I think they had them sit there watching what was happening to me, saying, if you start talking about what you're working on out here at the base, this is going to happen to your wives and your daughters and your sisters.
That sounds.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that's as good a theory as anybody is going to come up with.
Yeah, any impression I got from them was like they were extremely uncomfortable. They didn't want to watch what they were watching, but they were told they had to watch because they needed a good lesson in what could happen.
Man, I am so sorry, Niara. That's so awful.
It's a long
What ha-
time in the past, and I'm okay today, and my warrior spirit as well, and going strong.
I can tell it shows, Niara. There's not that many people that would have the strength and courage to come forward like you have. But at any rate, I appreciate your honesty and bravery coming out with this information, because, like I said, not many people would be comfortable to do that. And
Yeah,
um,
and people
what happened next?
oh, I'll just say this: people that I've talked to that have had similar experiences
Hmm.
um, have had it even worse than I had it.
It's
You
hard to
know,
imagine.
as bad as I had it, it's worse out there for some people. It's worse. So anyway, what happened after that was being they sat me down in some kind of interrogation session with the classic one where the light is shining down on you, the person being interrogated, and then you can barely see the people around you asking you questions or threatening you or waving a gun in your face or whatever else like that, saying, you are not to talk about this outside of this at all. In fact, you're not even going to remember this. And if you ever do remember it, you better not talk about it. Otherwise, we'll come and do this shit to your little girl. You know, little girl at that time was, you know, 4 years old.
That's
So,
just unspeakable.
yeah, then
Un-
another injection that was supposed to put me to knock me out and wipe my memories out. Um, And then I woke up in my hotel room in Tonopah, the town of Tonopah,
mhm.
and didn't remember a thing. And when you're that severely traumatized, your own subconscious is going to take those memories and put them in a little box in the back of your mind. Because, well, I'll just tell you, when I got the memories back, I sat on the sofa, curled up in a ball again, rocking back and forth, thinking, how am I going to go on living knowing that people are this cruel? How can I go on living in a world where people are this cruel and this horrible, and I'm still here, so I must have found a way, huh?
Amen.
but
Amen to that, man. Wow.
but it's been a rough road. It's been a rough road. I never intended to go public. Sat on my story for 14 years before going public because this is kind of my joke that I say at conferences when I speak, and I say, if I go public with this, the only job of opportunity I'm going to have is speaking at UFO conferences. Well, I
Oh
went
my goodness.
public with it, and that was pretty much it. So, and then people got so hung up on the horror story of what happened to me that I thought, I really got to write a book, because this is not all there is to this story. Because when you go through an extreme trauma, it's a shamanic awakening. It happens in tribal societies where they put a young person who is selected to be a shaman through a deliberate traumatic experience that alters the mind and how they think and how they perceive reality. Or it happens by accident. Maybe somebody will have been struck by lightning and lay alone in a field, and their consciousness is out there in space someplace while their body's trying to make up its mind whether it's going to die or live. And
Mhm.
they have an experience out there in a different dimension, and then they come back into their body, and they have all this new knowledge to share with their people, and they can see things. Well, it's the same thing. When you have a traumatic experience, it can cause a shamanic awakening. And I think that that's basically what it had to me. Now, I'm not saying I'm a practicing shaman. I'm
Right.
not. But I did write a book about all the things that came to me because of those experiences. And it's a lot of remarkable things came, a lot of knowledge. For one thing, I did tons of research over all those 14 years, because I wanted to understand, how the hell does this happen to somebody in the United States of America, not in wartime? And in what political and social context can this even happen? I had all these questions. And so I looked and researched and found all kinds of stuff. And I researched chemtrails and all kinds of things. And
Mhm.
a long list. And I remembered something from the 1980s, before I remembered any of my abuse. I got really involved in health food and wanting to eat really healthy. And there was FDA did raids on health food stores in Las Vegas at that time, taking out this particular herb, which was chaparral, because it was said to cure cancer. So they raided the health food stores and they took all this stuff out. And I started really questioning what was going on right then. I thought, instead of raiding health food stores and taking away a natural herb, why don't the doctors and the pharmacists just make better medicine? Why do they want to limit our our ability to take care of ourselves with natural herbs?
Mhm.
And it's like they want to take that away from us, and they want us to only use their drugs. Well,
Exactly.
a lot of answers have come out of that. They want us to take our drugs because the drugs can keep us under control. Natural herbs, they're for free people that want to stay free.
Right.
You know,
I agree.
so
I couldn't agree any more than that. You're dead on with that. These pharmaceutical companies, big pharma, I think they're all in cahoots. I really do. I've
yeah,
felt that way for a while. Um, just an example. The last several years, I've done a lot of research on hemp and cannabis, and it seems like, even though it's not for everybody, for sure, it's not for everyone, but I think this needs to be taken another hard look at, because I think that it seems to be helping a lot of people out versus
yeah,
some of the pharmaceutical stuff that has this horrible side effects, and God only knows what it does to our body and mind in the long run.
yeah. Hmm. Well, it's kind of gone to the nth degree with what's happening in our society today. So anyway, I thought, whatever happened to me, it happened in a much larger context. And I read a book called Transformation of America, not transformation, but Transformation of America, by Kathy O'Brien and Mark Phillips. And Mark Phillips said something interesting about tracking children when they're really young, through standardized testing. In schools, when you had to do those tests and you had a certain time period to finish it in, and you had to fill in all the little bubbles with the number 2 pencil. you know um, they did those tests, and they took the results of those tests for every single kid that took them, and tried to figure out what these kids would be good at when they were grown up more, and then approach them about maybe work in the FBI or the CIA or other areas where the skills that they had in school might be useful.
Sounds like the Soviet era stuff, the Soviet
Yeah.
Union stuff. Because I
Anyone who,
know I heard a story about that. If you don't mind, they were had like I was watching this documentary about the Dyatlov Pass incident, and they were
mhm,
talking about why all these youngsters who were in college or even in like older adolescents were they were encouraging them to go out and learn all these survival skills and go to these prestigious universities over there so they could be a good socialist or whatever.
yeah, I know. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to figure out, but there's all the clues are there if you really want to look for them. And I really wanted to look for them because I wanted to know what the heck happened to me, why, and again, in what political and social context. And I found out lots, and I put most all of it in my book. And I even did a little segment there about False Memory Syndrome Foundation and the people that try to discredit people who come out of memories with hypnosis, who come out with memories from hypnosis. And, they have some very unsavory beginnings and they're connected with the CIA. And I think that it was specifically done because people started to remember one way or another, they started to remember the abuse that they underwent. And the CIA was thinking, wow, well, we have to invent something to discredit these people that are coming up with these memories. So they invented the False Memory Syndrome Foundation. And all the research I did around that is in my book.
Now, your book is Facing the
Based,
Shadow, Embracing the Light.
yeah.
What year did that book come out?
It was published in 2013.
Okay. Um, as far as the book goes, do you what all just in general, what did you lay out in that book, and as for what we can learn from?
Well, I separated in three parts. Part one is the experiences. Part two is healing, the path to within, or the journey to within. And then the last part is called awakening. And I go into all this stuff about consciousness and all the things that I've learned from it.
Mhm.
Because, it's like you have this big burst of an awakening, and then you realize that it touches on every area of all of our lives. Like writing a piece in there. I've got a copy of the book here, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah, here's what it looks like. It's
Um,
on Amazon.
is
Hmm.
that is that the best way for those who want to obtain a copy of this book? Is that the best way to attain it? Amazon, or do you have or is it on your website?
No, it's on Amazon. So I don't have a lot of copies here. I want to get some. I just haven't had the chance. Life has been extremely busy for me offline for quite a while. So I just haven't had the chance to order them, but I do want to order more to have at home sometime. I'm just not sure when. But it's there's a chapter in there that for some reason came up right now, so it must be an important one to mention. It's called Truth, Freedom, and Responsibility. Because a lot of people, they want complete freedom, but you have to understand that with complete freedom comes responsibility.
Yes,
And it's if you're completely free, does that mean you're free to hurt other people? If you're completely free, does that mean that you're free to steal or to, do other things? No, there has to be some kind of natural law that says, yes, you have complete freedom to do and to be whatever you want to be, except when it limits or inhibits the freedom of another person in their expression. So you can't just go out there and do whatever you want with anything or to anybody. You have to exercise the responsibility that comes with freedom. And
absolutely.
yeah.
And I'll take it a little bit further, I guess.
Hmm.
My philosophy on that is, especially the older I've gotten, I definitely believe that people should be able to forge their path as long as it does not affect another person. That's where I draw the line, and I think that's
Hmm.
an important key.
It very much is. I read a lot of philosophy when I was in college and, wrote essays and stuff like that. And there's, a lot of really deep thinkers over the centuries have really thought about this and really defined some really good rules for a natural society to live by. And so that's just one other thing. And then I wrote a little chapter called "What is Consciousness?" And I think I did a good job on that chapter. Um, and because I feel this book is so important, because I'm not really hung up on becoming a millionaire through copies of my book,
It doesn't happen, ladies and
it has,
gentlemen.
it has happened, I finally put up, I thought I want people to have this, and if they can't afford the book, I want them to have a copy anyway. So I put a PDF of it on my website. So if you go to my website, facingtheshadow.embracingthelight.com, there's an article there that you'll see immediately as you go on there. And it says, a gift for all my friends and followers. And I put there a PDF copy of my book for people to download and read. And actually having a PDF copy is good as a research tool for looking at what I've read, because you can put it up in a PDF reader and you can do find, and then you can find a certain part of the book that you might be looking for, which might be harder to do if you're just leafing through it, the physical
Wow.
copy.
That's very generous to offer that book for people who can't who are can't either don't have the means to purchase it or can't afford it for whatever reason. I think that's real generous. Now
Yeah,
you also have this other website, and I kind of wanted to ask you a quick question about that if you don't mind.
sure.
Encounters with Healing, healing and integration for new paradigms and expanding consciousness. Tell me about
Mhm.
it.
Yeah. Well, that's something that I was doing. I still have the website up there because I want the information to remain available to people of the things I published there. I haven't been doing healing work. After the book was published, I began to experience something that I call shadow targeting, where things were happening to me that were really upsetting. They really triggered a lot of PTSD. I got scared. I had very strange things happen, like some woman I didn't even know coming up and kind of attacking me and saying things that she knew about my personal life, and I didn't even know who she was. And and then I would have strange things happen with my car, actually a truck that I was driving at the time. So now I will never drive a car that's older than 2003. I'll just drive an old car because these ones that have uh, anti-theft systems wired into them. I mean, people, you really ought to ask yourself, why is that not an optional feature on a car these days? It's hardwired into it. Is it really for your safety and security that if somebody's stealing your car, well, that's part of it. But what they really want is they want control over your vehicle, because it's another control over you, because your car can be remotely hacked through that anti-theft system and controlled remotely. And I experienced a little bit of that, and it was really scary, and it caused me to cut short a book tour I was on and just go straight home.
That's so aggravating to say the least.
Yeah. So I went through a lot of years where I just was exhausted all the time, wasn't sleeping well, and didn't realize. I finally realized it was Wi-Fi, that I'm sensitive to Wi-Fi, and so now I don't use Wi-Fi in the house much anymore. I use a hardwired connection, and with all my devices. So anyway, it was really a very intense 9 years where I was hardly sleeping at all. I was having severe headaches all the time. I was really just walking around half alive. And then things got better when I got a service dog, and things, started looking up there. Um,
What kind of
so I'm,
service dog you got? Because
I'm
I'm a dog lover.
yeah. Uh, well, what kind of one? One that takes care of somebody with PTSD. So that's about all I want to say about it. But
Understood.
and
Understood.
she's been my best friend and my best therapist ever. And
That's really good. That's a
yeah,
blessing.
yeah. So there's that, and then finally, after the book was published, I mean, things were so bad, with living in apartments and all the noise that comes with living in apartments, and trying to live in an apartment with all that noise and having PTSD was just crazy making, and I was so exhausted. I told a couple of my friends um, that I was thinking about putting all my things in storage and moving into my van with my dogs, and just not living in an apartment anymore because I just couldn't stand it anymore. Well, they did a GoFundMe for me that led to me having a house of my own to live in.
Wow, that's amazing. What a blessing.
It was a huge, huge blessing, and I will remain forever grateful to those folks that helped make that happen. It was life-saving, literally life-saving. Because I'll tell you what, I know I can't commit suicide because it's not the way to go.
Absolutely.
But you can have suicidal depression when you go through the things that I went through. You can have suicidal depression without knowing, well, with knowing that you can't go ahead and do that to yourself. You know what that means? That means that you don't have an out. You don't think, well, I'm so depressed, I just can't take it anymore. I'm just going to blow my brains out. You think, oh, I'm just so depressed, I can't take it anymore, and it just goes on day after day because I don't have the out of suicide. You know, I just have to go living with it day to day. And it was a very, very difficult time. It was a very difficult time. And
Yeah,
uh,
I
and
can only
then
imagine.
yeah, and then there's these people that they have their own agenda for what they want to do in their films or documentaries. And the very first documentary I was in was called Dreamland, and my identity was supposed to be hidden. I did it on the agreement that my identity would be hidden because I wasn't ready to go public. This was back in 1994 or 96. And so I went ahead and got on the film because I wanted to, again, I wanted to help people. I thought if other people are having these kind of memories come back into their life, they have to know that they're not crazy. This stuff really happens. And so I went ahead and did it, but my identity was so poorly hidden in that film that anybody that knew me knew that it was me. So that scared me even worse for quite a long time. And I wouldn't have anything to do with any more documentaries or people wanting to do anything because, you know, it was an abuse. It was another
It was
means
a
of,
violation of your trust, of your
yeah.
dignity. It was a violation. That's so uncalled for.
And then, you know, it happens with other productions too. The best thing that I was ever in was Above Majestic because they were just interested in my story as it was. They didn't relate anything out of context. They just let it stand for itself, and it was really well done. And then at the end of it, I got a chance to do a little bit of an interview about what I know about what I've learned about consciousness and how it could change everything. So anybody out there listening, if you want to see me doing an interview in a documentary, I would say that's the one to watch. And it won all kinds. It hit #1 within days of being released. Really an excellent, excellent documentary if you haven't seen it. And then I was in another documentary called Extraordinary: The Seeding. And it could have been a really good experience. You know, we're doing the interview parts and everything went really good. And I felt really good about doing it with these guys. Then when the film came out, um, they interviewed me about experiences with ETs, and they interviewed me a little bit about the military abduction experiences. Even that wasn't the thrust of the film. The film comes out, I start watching it, and they get to the segment about me talking about experience I had with ETs, and they slapped a piece of film in there where I was describing the sexual assault by military. Not extraterrestrials did that to me. The military did that. But it the way it was done, it made
Mhm.
me sound like I was talking about extraterrestrials doing that terrible stuff to me. And that I've never ever said that about my extraterrestrial experiences at all. My extraterrestrial experiences were strange. They were disturbing. They were way out of any kind of context you can put them in here on Earth in our regular
Mhm.
society. But the ETs treated me with TLC compared to what these military people did.
I believe it. Uh,
And to take what I was talking about with military people and put it in, making it look like I was talking about what ETs did to me, that was a violation. It makes me look like a liar, and I'm not a liar. And so I was really very irritated with that, you know, very angry. And then with this thing about, you know, watching the ET field, turned from being a serious research field with all these conferences where people present their research or present their experiences, it's turned into an entertainment enterprise. Conferences, they usually invite back the same old cadre of people every single year, and maybe they'll have a new one in here and there, but the same people get invited to speak every year. And as soon as it became clear that my primary message from my experiences was about consciousness and how our consciousness has been controlled through generation of human beings, all the way back to the inception of humanity, they didn't want any part of that. They didn't want anything out there. They've become like gatekeepers. And I tell you, you know what, Mark? When I was writing about consciousness in my book, I knew that that it was probably the most powerful message that I was putting out, and it was also the most dangerous one, because human consciousness has been programmed and indoctrinated down through the ages. You know, I'm talking about going back to the inception of humanity, talking about the Spanish Inquisition and the things that were done to people during that, and all kinds of things that have been done to humanity to force them to live in a particular way, in a particular box in their mind. And then our collective unconscious spins out a version of reality according to the doctrination of these elites. And we live in that, just like in the Matrix films. We live in that reality that we're spinning out from our collective unconscious. And they do it to us so that they can keep control of us. And if we change our thoughts, if we withdraw our mental energy and our emotional energy from the matrix that we have built, that they've made us build because they indoctrinated us to do it, then we have control. We're the ones in control. But like I said in Above Majestic at the end, the only way we can do this is if we do it in unity and if we do it with love. Because
Love our neighbor.
love is the great unifying force. And so that's the thing. And that's the other thing that was very irritating about the Extraordinary documentary. I gave them some of the very best interview footage I've ever done on consciousness and its potential, and not 1 inch of that film made it into the documentary.
That's it's pretty interesting that the statement you just made. I was interviewing a guy who was on that show Unsolved Mysteries back during the early 90s. He was a guy named Howard Storm, and I remember him telling me kind of off the record a little bit, or maybe it was on the podcast. I don't remember but he did tell me that, they kind of want, like when he was sitting there in his house and the Unsolved Mystery crew was there interviewing him, that they kind of wanted it to fit their narrative. And like when he talked about a part where he met the Lord, and he went to these amazing details about that particular part of his experience, they cut almost every bit of it out to fit their narrative.
Right. That's the thing. You have to watch when somebody's making a documentary or film. You have to really be careful of what their agenda is, because they want to portray things like there's a Dr. David Jacobs, and he does hypnosis with abductees. And his entire focus is on how evil the ETs are and what are they doing to people. And everything he reports about them is really dark. He's got his own personal bias, and he puts it on. He doesn't just let experiences come out generically as they want to come out. He always has to put the spin on it. And he does his clients a great disservice. Now, on the other side of that, there's Mary Rodwell in Australia, and God bless and keep her down there with everything going on down there. And she looks at it from an entirely different perspective. What are these beings? Yes, there's negative ones and there's good ones, but what exactly is really happening? What is really happening with this hybridization that's happening between humans and different types of extraterrestrials? And she takes an entirely different tack. And she wanted to do a session with me when I was at the UFO Congress in 2012. And we did a session. We did hypnosis session with her. And in this session, I wanted to meet my Lyran star family, because I feel like I feel like this may sound strange to some of your listeners, but I feel that I chose this incarnation as a human being coming from a Lyran background, a Lyran extraterrestrial background. And I took on this thing because my Lyran people wanted to know what the heck is happening down on Earth with these people. What happens to people once they're born into this culture that causes things to get so screwed up? And so I did the session with her, and it was really remarkable. It was, I found myself on the ship with my Lyran people, and it was like a fifth dimensional ship. And because of being in a fifth dimensional zone, it was overwhelming at first because we have 5 physical senses. We have touch, we have seeing, we have hearing, we have smelling, we have tasting, and we separate them out, by what each one of them does. Over on the ship, they were all overlapping, so if you would see a color, you could taste it and smell it and hear it too.
Wow.
It was really amazing, nothing bad about it. It was just wondrous and really amazing, and a little hard to process because I'm used to 5 separate physical senses,
Right.
Then he said, I need to take you a couple places and show you some things that are going to make life easier for you back on Earth. And I said, okay. So we went in the astral body traveling out across space, and he took me over Mars. We kind of just flew in the astral body over Mars, and he showed me that there were bases on Mars, both above ground and below ground. And he showed me the Cydonia area where the face is on Mars and the pyramids. And there are human beings there doing an archaeological dig around that area.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. And then he said, now we're going to go to the moon of the past when you were there, because that's part of my experience too that I didn't bring up yet on the show here. I was taken to the moon and abused during that 3-month time period too. Anyway, I told this Lyran guy, I said, I don't want to go near the moon. It was a terrible place, terrible things happened to me there. I don't want to go near it. He says, well, this is the moon of the past when you were there, and I need to show you something that happened. So we went there, and he didn't show me anything that I was going through at all. What he did was he showed me a telepathic exchange that went between an officer that was part of being in charge of my time being on the moon, and a tall, willowy looking extraterrestrial. They were having this telepathic conversation, and the telepathic ET told the officer, you have no idea who you have there. Do you realize that everything you're doing to her gets reported back to her people? And I think it was shortly after that I was out of the program. I think they took me back to Earth. They wiped my memory out as best they could, and I wasn't taken for any of that crap anymore. And I think that's why my Lyran contact thought it was important for me to see that and understand that.
Where are these beings from?
Star system Lyra. The home world there is no more. I believe it was destroyed by reptilian incursion, and then a lot of spaceships left from there and went different parts of the galaxy. Some went to the Pleiades, and there's a Lyran Pleiadian species now, and some of them came here to Earth. I was one of the ones that came ages and ages and ages ago to Earth as part of the Lyran species. And it's a lot of it's in my book. I've got these little parts in my book called Interacts, and it's where I relate the memories I have of being Lyran and coming to Earth, and then being involved with Earth for several, many lifetimes. And those memories came back spontaneously. I didn't have hypnosis to get those back. They just would come. And another thing, when I was on the Lyran ship, when I would get taken up to the Lyran ship in my astral body while my body was asleep on Earth, and they would put me in this big glass tube, and they would turn it on, and this sound and light waves would bounce back and forth inside this tube, and it would bounce through my astral body, and it would upload all my Earth experiences into the holographic systems of the ship.
Wow.
And then any one of my people, my Lyran people, could go to a console on the ship and experience to whatever degree they wanted what my experiences were being on Earth. And I believe now that they learned an awful lot about how how indoctrination happens and the control that it holds over people's minds. You know, we really have to throw off the indoctrination. And in the 60s, there was a bumper sticker that people were fond of, and it said, "Question authority." I would invent a new bumper sticker for the days we're living in right now, and I would say, "Question reality." Is everything
Absolutely.
exactly what you think it ought to be, or are there things that you're not perceiving that you should be perceiving? Because sometimes, I mean, right now we're living in a time where indoctrination is deadly. It's deadly because
Yeah.
if you believe what the doctors and whatever people are doing to you with the needle and stuff like that, it could go very badly. You know, there's stuff in that thing that you do not want in your body. But if you
Absolutely.
believe
I believe
doctors,
it.
yeah, my mother used to think doctors were right up there on just a slightly lower throne than God. You know, she believed everything doctors told her and everything else like that. Fortunately, I didn't take on that programming from her. Um, but and I've always questioned everything. And then when I had to do all the research to find out the social and political context in which all that stuff happened to me, I learned an awful lot. You just don't blindly trust anybody or what they're saying. You have to learn to develop your intuition. You have to learn to develop your gut sense, and you have to feel the vibration of the person as best you can to try to figure out, are they telling me the truth? Are they not telling me the truth? And you just have to really try to develop that sense. And you have to question everything. Just keep a question mark on everything until you are satisfied in yourself with your own personal experience that something put in front of you is real. It's
Wow.
really, really important.
I
So,
agree. I think it's really important.
yeah,
We're kind of running short on time. Niara, I really, really appreciate you coming forward and being on not just my program, but every program I've seen you on. This is something that really most people wouldn't have the guts, the courage to come forward and say, be very blunt and tell the story. And I'm very humbled, very honored to know you, and you're a friend of Project Stargate.
thank you.
Um, so we got to do this again sometime. One thing, whenever I get my ducks in a row with this research I'm doing on the PK and UFOs and zero point energy, maybe we can get together and talk about that sometime.
Okay. Sounds
I'd love to.
okay.
This is, you've been listening to Project Stargate. This is Missing Time with Niara Isley. Her website is facingtheshadow.embracingthelight.com. Check out her book. Also, if you're interested in getting a physical copy of her book, it is available on Amazon. Um, Thank you very much for being with us, Niara, and I really enjoyed having you as a guest today.
Okay. Thank you for having me, Mark. Hope I didn't get too far out there for you.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. You did great. This is what we're looking for. We want this information because the more information that we can all put out there about these mysteries, the closer we might come to solving them. But at any rate, thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for listening to Project Stargate. Have a blessed day.
Thanks.